Hello everyone. Just give me a couple quick seconds here. I'm going to tweet out the link to this stream. Oh, that's going to pester the fuck out of me. So we'll just mute my own stream. Skip through that. But yes, so I've got some stuff to talk to you about today. And I hope you'll sit down and listen for just a few minutes. Dum-de-dum-de-dum, type that in. Tweet that out to all the good people. And as the title of the stream would hint, we're taking a look at Islamic microcolonialism. Now, I'm gonna pull an Icarus here and fly maybe a little too close to the sun when it comes to terminology. In that, when I start talking about colonialism, or microcolonialism, I expect you folks to kind of have your knees jerked to the tune of the social justice microcolonialism. What's up, JT? Not much, Henry. I'm going to cover that in a second. And Riot in Paris. I haven't been watching, but I would not be surprised. But it does tie into that subject as a whole happening right now. Oh, lovely. Then I've picked just the right time to do this stream, I suppose. Oh, and Billy's come to say hello, as he often does. So, Islam's doing this Black Lives Matter style. Down you go, Bill. Alright, so I've been kicking around this term for a while, and I think it's just becoming more and more relevant, or more accurate, I should say. I didn't get the jump on the quote-unquote new white man's burden before Sargon brought it up online. So I'm going to try not to miss out on this term, on coining this little turn of phrase. Turns out I can just pile socks on my cat. Anyway, a Muslim got shot, now he breaks shit. Oh, lovely. Probably earned it. I know, I should be more skeptical about that, but sorry, Bill. Let's face it, odds are these days in Europe, if a Muslim got shot and it wasn't by some random citizen, and fuck, even if it was by some random citizen, odds were, in the paraphrase, I guess to quote the famous musical Chicago, he had it coming. But no, the topic I'd like to talk to you guys about today is what I call microcolonialism. And just by the name of it, you should be able to figure out pretty much where I'm going here. And I've got the link up here to colonialism's definition. You'll see the good old dictionary definition. The policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers, and exploiting it economically. Well, if we change this and eliminate country and simply put in, say, a city, a neighborhood, a township. Now, personally, I would define microcolonialism as the process of emigrating from a country, settling in a new country, and upon doing so, becoming the practice of acquiring full or partial political control. I guess I could best define it as the practice of acquiring full or partial political control over a city, neighborhood, or region upon immigrating to a country from a nation with significant cultural differences and exploiting it economically, politically, so on and so forth. Oh, okay, Shade. But yeah, so I've been seeing this happening more and more and more. Of course, we're only getting just we're kind of on the after the break of the wave of it here in Canada. And it's definitely an issue that's been going on much more in Europe. And yeah, it is to an extent an invasion, though an invasion seems more I should say more coordinated. I have to sneeze and I can't. My body won't decide on whether it wants to sneeze or not. But anyway, I'm gonna give an example of microcolonialism or microcolonization from a while back, known as the Rossetto effect. And I got this example from Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers back when I was in university studying political science and Canadian history. And so, you look here, it's the town of Rossetto. And I'll start reading here. In 1882, a group of men left Rossetto Valfortore, Valley of Roses, a town of 1,300 located near the province of Foggia, I'm probably mispronouncing that, in the southern Italian region of Puglia. Again, I'm going to butcher the Italian here. And set sail for New York, as described by Gladwell, quote, "For centuries, the paesani of Rossetto worked in the marble quarries in the surrounding hills or cultivated the fields in the terraced valley below. Walking 4 or 5 miles down the mountain in the morning and then making the long journey back up the hill at night. It was a hard life. The townsfolk were barely literate and desperately poor and without much hope for economic betterment. Until word reached Rossetto at the end of the 19th century of the land of opportunity across the ocean." Now let's parlay that over to, in 2015, a group of men left Aleppo, Syria, a town of so and so much located in the civil war torn country of Syria. You get where I'm going here. The importance of all this for me personally, and this is the one man's tale, is about his great grandfather. But here it is. According to Gladwell, Rossetto, Pennsylvania, they renamed their own township. They all moved there and named it after their original township. They built closely clustered houses. They built Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church, and they named the main street on which it stood Garibaldi Avenue, after the hero of Italian unification. They set up spiritual societies and organized festivals. In every yard they planted gardens, raised pigs, and grew grapes for homemade wine. They built schools, parks, a convent, and a cemetery. All the while they opened family-owned shops, bakeries, and restaurants. Everyone fought over bragging rights for the best wine in town. Now, of course, you wouldn't have Muslims bragging over wine, but I'm not quoting this as being one for one to what's going on now, or what I perceive to be going on now. Only Italian was spoken in the early 1900s, and not just any Italian, but the Foggian dialect. Rossetto had become its own self-sufficient world, and probably would have remained so, but for a man named Stuart Wolff. Now, Stuart Wolff was a physician, goes on, professor, studies the whole thing of why these people who ate and lived in a way that indicated that heart disease should have been a huge thing, huge problem in the community, but it wasn't. So he was, just studying all these such things. But this is the practice in a much watered down version of what I call microcolonialism, microcolonization. When you look at areas, was it like Malmo, Sweden? I always screw up the Belgian town or the Belgian neighborhood. Molenbeek, one of the two, where the attacker, one of the masterminds of the Paris attacks, the Bataclan concert hall and soccer stadium attacks, was sheltered by the community for, I believe it was weeks, if not months, after the attack, where people simply don't tread anymore. Neighborhoods in Birmingham, England, where Sargon of Akkad is mentioned, that you don't go there. It's not officially, it's not by law or anything, but it's definitely enforced on a social level. And now there's been some level of concern, let's say, over the Islamic faith here in Canada recently. We had our brief dust up over Motion M103. There was the slaying of the 6 men at the Quebec City Mosque by Alexandre Bissonnette. And there have been honor killings in the past. And we're really getting to the point where I'm truly concerned that the average everyday life of Canadians as I knew it is not going to be what it was for much longer, or what it has been for much longer. And that disturbs me. That disturbs me because I am very proud of my country. I have been very proud of my country for most of my life. I've been very proud to live in a nation where, people are willing to say, yeah, you know what, we're willing to be taxed to provide health care because, but for the grace of God, there go I. A different flip of the coin, and that person could have been me. And so in the event that we may need it, or somebody else may need it, we're willing to contribute. I'm very proud of my country for its peacekeeping efforts around the world that unfortunately, have been cut back, have been restricted, have been almost weaned off over the last little while since the days of Harper's prime ministership, and which haven't really been reinstated with the incoming Trudeau cabinet. And now I see that we have politicians deciding for Canadians what opinions, what thoughts, what means of expression will be considered appropriate or acceptable in society, as opposed to these politicians being the expression of our opinion. And now it comes to the topic of Islam. Or should I say it comes to the topic of Islamic Enclaves. Plan to develop 100-home Muslim community near Montreal gets rough reception, thankfully. You will find, if there's one redeeming thing in French Canadians, it's they've got a healthy sense of bigotry, if that makes any sense. It's they have a healthy sense of bigotry, and by that I mean they actually care about maintaining their culture. They care about the preservation of their values. And I'm not going to go all, 14 or 15 words in you guys. I'm going to go all, 1488 or some shit. I'm not going all white ethno-state, so you don't have to worry about that. But they do care about preserving their culture, preserving their language, preserving their customs. And again, that's something that I admire, is that they have the strength of self and the strength of will, I should say. Say, you know what? No, this is our custom. This is our culture. And if you want to be here, you're going to have to accept that. And so basically what's gone on here is that a man put forward, there was a proposed 100-home Muslim community to be located south of Montreal. Of course, it spoke fierce retaliations. And he stated, the Premier of Quebec, you can see here, discrimination goes in both directions. Inclusion goes in both directions, he said. We prefer housing diversity as much for cultural communities as for religions. It's fundamental. Now, the man proposing it now says, originally proposing the document, that it would be a community in which Muslim values were upheld. But it's no different than a different housing association or a different gated community. You see, the difference is we don't allow gated communities here to work off of religious law. We don't allow gated communities to decide for people things that are reserved for them. Patriarchy bear. We don't allow communities to say, you can't do this. We don't allow them to infringe upon charter rights, at least not yet. And so, again, there are more and more of this. This is the gentleman here, Nabil Warda. Incorporate halal financing. I'm sure that's lovely. But anyway, this is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm worried about coming to my country. Grenade attacks like in Sweden. Terrorist attacks like in Paris, London, in Belgium, the airport, Germany with axe attacks and sexual assault gangs on New Year's. I don't want to see my country throwing itself out on the street essentially for want of being inclusive to everyone. Oh, we have to include everybody. We have to be super, super tolerant. We have to bend over backwards and make concessions for everyone, even and especially if it means compromising traditional Canadian values. Microcolonization. Microcolonization is the process by which an immigrating group takes over the realty and political control of an area in order to enforce their own cultural norms. I'd like to know what everybody else's thoughts are on this. I hope I'm not just rambling incoherently, that what I'm saying is making sense. The way I figure it, look, if you want to come to Canada, I'm all for you coming. If you pass the muster and you're able to come in based on our standards, I'll open up with open arms. Come on in. However, if you're going to come to Canada, I expect you to become a Canadian. Even if that only means, in the absolute most basic sense of the term, ascribing to the rights and freedoms that we hold to be human, that we hold to be essential to living life in Canada. And one of those is that, and this is section 15.1 of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that every Canadian has equal protection of and benefit under the law, regardless of race, color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, any of it. Every Canadian has the right to equal protection of and benefit under the law. And one of the problems is that when you allow these communities to be so segregated, to wall themselves off figuratively, or in this proposal's case, literally, you allow them to start meting out their own law and order. We've seen that in Belgium. We've seen it in France. We've seen it in Germany. We've seen it in Britain. I don't want to see it happen in Canada. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that certain matters were able to be handled by a religious court, a community court of sorts. The Jewish community in Canada has had the ability in the past, if not entirely certain now, to handle certain things, certain family court type issues. Let's say with the U.S. Yeah, sorry, folks. I get distracted by the chat, but family courts, divorce proceedings, certain things like that could be handled within, you know, not to an official Canadian extent, but there was some leeway for churches to handle their own affairs, as it were. And I used to think when I was younger that, well, these people they share a different faith. They do things differently. And if their values are at the very most basic level the same as ours, then I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be able to handle things like divorce or that sort of deal. The difference is that when you switch from operating in a framework of, and again, as much as I bashed Dennis Prager, once you shift from what are traditionally Judeo-Christian values to what we have seen to be Islamic values, well, I don't think those two quite even out. And I would rather see everyone held to the single standard, even if that meant, say, infringing upon the freedoms previously enjoyed by certain religious or cultural communities within Canada. I'd rather see everyone restricted to one standard than to allow multiple standards that would not only allow for but enforce things that turn my stomach as I would like to think, socially conscious Canadian. I'm a men's rights activist, but that doesn't mean by any stretch that I dislike women, much to the dint of the anger of feminists, the confusion of some people. I don't want to see them subjugated, and I won't support any system that would allow for that to happen, or endorse that, or enforce that. I can't in good faith, I can't in good conscience allow for that to happen to my country. The paradox of tolerance, I believe, is the problem I'm now wrestling with, and that most of Canada is wrestling with. That to be a truly tolerant society, the one thing you cannot tolerate is intolerance. And as far as I can tell, intolerance is something absolutely inherent with Islamicized communities, these microcolonies. You know, there's a lot to be said for the open and shut immigration system. There's a lot to be said for the old system, by which they would open the doors, as it were, the metaphorical doors to the country, let in immigrants from a certain area, and then close the doors and leave them shut for a while. You would do this as a nation just long enough that the previous generations that had come in were able to become naturalized, culturally acclimatized to where they had now moved. And once they more or less assimilated, begun sharing values consistently, and functioned within the country's society and practices, you could open the doors again, let more in. In doing this, you do get communities like your little Odessas, your little Italys, Chinatowns. Hell, the Danforth in Toronto is essentially just one little bit of grease slammed down in the middle of Toronto. But again, all these communities, though you can usually go shop to shop speaking the local dialect, you're not going to have a problem there if you speak English or French. Maybe if you speak French. Toronto's not going to really help you out with that. Then again, I'm sure there are places you can still go that you could, if you really wanted to have, your francophone nature catered to, they could handle it. But folks, let me know what you think about microcolonialism. If the term applies, if you think I've picked the right nomenclature for the issue, because I've been trying to find a term for it that really encapsulates it, and patriarchy bare hair has said an invasion, but it's not quite so blunt, and I think in its subtlety lies the sometimes sinister nature of it. It's the fact that it seems to happen. What was the old quote? Was it Mark Twain? Gradually, then suddenly, something along those lines. Slowly, then all at once. I won't be able to find it. I'll try. I think it was that. Gradually, then all at once. Been talking to a lot of ex-Muslim. This is against M103. Mark Ant. Yeah, see, I don't see it quite as an invasion. I just think the details are a little off for that. And yes, I understand they're doing it very, very slow, and they build up until they have entire control over a region. But this is why I'm referring to it as microcolonialism as opposed to an invasion. An invasion would be D-Day. An invasion would be an absolute storming of beaches. I guess that's what it was for the migrant crisis in Europe. I wouldn't dismiss that. But here in Canada, I wouldn't go so far as to call it an invasion just yet. There are a lot of issues I've had actually recently on this topic, and one of them was with Trudeau's campaign promise to double the intake of refugees from Syria. And to be honest, if these are elderly or very young men, women, I don't tend to have a problem. But when I see military-aged men coming over, I get a little upset. I think that if I was forced to flee from my home, and my family were booted out and had to flee for mortar strikes, RPGs, what have you, that I would hate to look on myself after running from my home and leaving somebody else to fight that battle. So I can't, in consistency, really turn around and look favorably upon those who've left their homes when they had the ability to fight and refuse to do so. I actually proposed once that if Canada wanted to house 20,000 refugees, that we could send a single trip of our 5 Globemaster cargo jets. And that could carry enough of this one particular tent. A friend of mine works at a manufacturing business where they make parachutes, they make tents, they make all sorts of tactical rigging and all these things. And he told me, he says, yeah, I said, how many people could you fit in one of these tents? And I'm pretty sure it was around the realm of, was it? I want to say it was a dozen to 16 or so. I have a video on it. From a while ago. And you could pack enough of these, based on their dimensions once stowed, onto military cargo pallets that the C-17 Globemaster? Could be wrong. The Globemasters function with, and you could haul enough in one single trip with our 5 Globemasters to provide homes for anywhere between 19 to 23,000 people. Now you tell me why that wouldn't be more efficient than bringing 20,000 people here, housing them here, providing them with benefits here and education here, and having them take jobs here that could otherwise be filled by other Canadians. I don't understand it. And I don't intend to allow it to happen as much as I have any power to do so. When it came to Motion M103, I wrote a letter. 3 pages, handwritten. No typos, no errors. Couple of corrections and start overs needed for that. To my MP, Neil Ellis, Bay of Quinte. And I expressly told him that I did not want to see his name in the Eyes section for M103. Told him why. I was polite. I was clear. I backed up my arguments. Sadly, Neil Ellis's name was among the ayes, as was every other Liberal MP that voted. And so I don't believe that Neil will be seeing my vote in the next election. But the problem is I don't know who will then, because the other candidates never so much as replied to me. Folks, microcolonialism is happening, whether you like it or not at this point. The only difference is whether you stand for the effects of it. Oh, and Boons is here with the bullets of commands in the chat. Folks, I don't want to see Scarborough become a Molenbeek. I don't want to see Thompson become the next Birmingham. I don't want to see, Victoria, BC, become the next Malmo. I don't want to see that happen in the country. I don't want to see that happen with anybody's country at this point. What I would like to see is a solution to this issue, something to fix this problem, get Syria back on its damn feet, and inform Muslims that unless they want to adopt westernized values, they're simply not welcome here. You adopt westernized values, you want to treat everybody the same, you want to be equal and be under the same courts as me, by all means. Come on in, take up a seat. Sit down, watch the hockey game with me. If you don't want to, I see no reason why you should be allowed in. I see no reason why you should be allowed to be here. Again, I'm all for everyone's personal freedoms, but when people start infringing on the rights and freedoms of others, I get a little sour. Now I've stretched this on to just over about a half an hour, and I think that's really about all I'm going to put you guys through. But I would like to open the floor to anyone in the chat who might like to ask a question or two. And yes, Fan, I would bring up hockey. Hockey is my sport. It's my baby. Let's try and let's see if I can just full screen this. How will that look in OBS? Shit-tacular? Ah, you betcha. And it's gonna just keep on repeating. What do you guys folks? Shoot, I was late. Summer Sun, you are not late. I am now taking questions. I will repeat myself if necessary. Omegon summon sandwich. But yeah. Summer, if you'd like to a little bit of a recap, man, that like never ending thread is going crazy. I titled, or I guess I defined, microcolonialism as the process by which an immigrating group takes over majority realty and political control of a township, city, neighborhood, or region, and converts the area into an enclave of their previous culture's values. Essentially, when you see areas like Molenbeek, Malmo, areas of Birmingham and Luton, cities, neighborhoods. Oh, I hide a dead eagle. I don't know. Areas where the city is now unrecognizable due to the mass influx of immigrants into the area. What did you do to it that it would be chasing you? Thank you, Summer. JT, if you're running fruit, I'm so confused. You're running. Hey, sundown. Man, everyone's popping in now. It says go live. I am live. Do it live. I didn't even say this was immigration. I don't consider this standardized immigration either. I told you what I consider. I consider it to be microcolonialism. When I start seeing a concerted effort to begin changing the politics, the laws, that sort of thing, then I would call it an invasion. When I could show that it was a concerted effort. Resistance is retail. Your ass will be lamented, laminated. It's more of a cultural insurrection or cultural undermining than an invasion. It's no more acceptable as microcolonialism. I just think that it fits a bit better. Could not think of the words you used. Yeah, it's microcolonialism. As I'm gonna keep whittling down this definition until I can reliably drop it over and over again. Oh, come on, cat, get down. But by the time they start doing that, is it not to stop it? No, actually. One of the best things about Canada is it takes quite a bit to change our charter. It does take a very, very... I believe it takes a referendum or a certain majority in which to swap it, and you wouldn't see it get to that point. This is one illegals in Mexico, so we immigrated to a part of the U.S. and Mexico. Boons. No, I don't think it'll get to that point. I do have more faith in my country than that. I just don't have a whole lot of faith in, I don't have a whole lot of faith in my politicians right now. But you see, this sort of thing takes a lot longer than the average prime minister's term. And I don't quite see it happening that Trudeau's cabinet is able to let these things happen and happen and happen. These poor policy decisions being made over and over and over again and still win re-election. I just don't see it happening. I think people are starting to realize, at least I've seen it from a lot of my friends, people that I know who were very, very liberal, who, I say liberal as in voted Canadian Liberal Party, who are now shifting and very displeased with Trudeau's administration. And it was all well and good when he was just selfies and him elbowing MPs in the tit. It was all good times then. Fen, I think you might be misinterpreting Motion M103. It is, for the most part, a bit of toothless parliamentary procedure expressing an opinion of the Parliament. And you will note that there have been a lot of politicians in the party, even in the Liberal Party, who voted for it because of party solidarity, but whom, in practice, actually oppose it. It wasn't by the Conservatives aren't out by such a large margin. Not at least that they can't come back after a term. And it's an odd world that in which I'd ever predict where I would be saying, God, I hope the Conservatives make a comeback. But I really do. I really do. They say my business management teacher when I was in college for entrepreneurship and small business management once told the anecdote idiom, don't know what the hell the word is for it. Anyway, he said, when you're young, you vote liberal because you have a heart. When you're old, you vote conservative because you have a brain. And more every day I started thinking about that. Thinking about how right it seems he was. You know, you got a heart in you. You wanna hope that things turn out well. And the older you get, you realize the more it is, the more that it's just bullshit. And so you've really got to you got to hold them to account. Now, I'm fairly confident that wherever I am, I can influence an election. It would not be the first time that I've gotten the political result I have wanted through citizen action. But it will take more effort in this sense. I guess I never had a heart then. No sundown, you just always had a brain. The difference. But yeah, I don't consider it an invasion just yet, at least not here in Canada. Europe, absolutely. Wave upon waves, millions of people enter the country. That was an invasion. Look at Sweden. There was one town, this mayor's pissed because they put some law in that basically when an immigrant comes to Sweden, they can say, "Oh, I want to live in this town." They just have to have an address in mind. You know, and they can move into that town. And this one mayor has been pissed because all of the Muslim immigrants are moving to that area. Right. When you are young, you have faith in humanity. When you get older, you learn everyone else is an asshole. Yeah, Shade, I don't think you guys have to worry too much about that. I think that all this leftist outrage is a big old flash in the pan, a lot of sizzle, not much steak, if you will. I think it's all talk at this point. They haven't got much behind them. Here in Canada, it's a bit of a different story. As I mentioned in my previous video, the last little quick stream I did, Canada is not so not so free, not so liberal when it comes to firearm rights, gun ownership. There's some pretty extenuating circumstances you need to be able to demonstrate in order to get a carry permit for a firearm. Owning your standard rifles and that's not a big deal. You can even get a restricted license for some of the more fun stuff. But yeah, I don't see at the current direction. I don't see Canada's future ending well. I don't see that turning out in such a fine light. I don't know about that because half the country owns guns. It doesn't take kindly to being enforced any religion or law. Yeah, Fan, I think you're going to get that some pushback on that. You know, gun ownership here in Canada is actually extremely high, comparatively to other nations. We have one of the highest gun ownership rates in the world. A lot of outdoorsmen, a lot of hunters. Not so much for personal defense or any of that sort. Actually, I don't think you can legally own one just for the reason of personal defense unless you can demonstrate that police defense is that your life is somehow in direct danger and that the average police response would be insufficient. Sorry there, folks, to clear my nose. They get a little sniffy here. Anyway, I keep saying I want to wind this down, but then there's always another question or two. So is there anything else you guys would like to ask? Like help me suss this thing out, help me kind of get this thing fleshed out as a concept. You cannot have Papa John's Pizza, please. No, unfortunately you cannot. I'm saying no to the Papa John's boons. You'll ruin your appetite. You'll ruin your appetite. There we are. That's better. Now, does that not look a little more manageable? And let's snap that bitch to center. Beautiful. Bitches love being in the center of everything. Yeah. Freedom Summer. I would really like Canadians start getting on that on the freedom train. Get on the old freedom kick for a while. Start deciding that we want to actually be able to defend ourselves. It's actually there's been armed robberies, armed break-ins in my city, just at random. You know, the armed robberies were bank robberies; they weren't quite random. Yeah, I worry. I want to move back to the more urban areas of the country because I'm not exactly in an urban center anymore. But I think the more I do that, the more I have to deal with this culture fight. Almost enough to be a guy gotta want to run off into the woods, but I can't let it happen. Beats me what it looks like. I'm watching 144 and buffering every. Well, I'm sorry. That's probably on my end. My output's probably shit. Well, in that case, folks, I am gonna wind this up right now. Then we're 14 minutes off from an hour. I think this has been enough of a rant by me. But let it be said that, at least I could be wrong. Let it be said that I coined the term microcolonialism. Running good for you. Well, that's good, Finn. Finn, just going leave, GT. Yeah, I haven't heard from Magnificent Bastard in a while. Kind of concerned about that. It has been finals week lately. I don't know how old he is. I think he's in schoolish. It's all sundown. Well, folks, I'll cut this off here. Wish you all a great evening, and if you come up with anything new in the future, leave it in a comment on this video, and I'll come back and check it. Check it, comment on it. I try to get back to all my comments as it is. Thank you all for coming by, and remember, I can't say keep your stick on the ice. I can't steal that. But yeah, keep an eye out, folks. Keep aware of what's going on. And remember, if you don't hold your politicians accountable, well, those are the ones that put you up against the wall. Good night, everyone.